Researchers have been studying the factors that influence us to say yes to the requests of others for over 60 years, and there can be no doubt that there's a science to how we are persuaded, and a lot of this science is surprising. When making a decision, it would be nice to think that people consider all the available information in order to guide their thinking, but the reality is very often different. In the increasingly overloaded lives we lead, more than ever, we need shortcuts or rules of thumb to guide our decision making. My own research has identified just 6 of these shortcuts as universals that guide human behavior. They are reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, and consensus. Understanding these shortcuts and employing them in an ethical manner can significantly increase the chances that someone will be persuaded by your request.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff.
Are you ready to level up? The podcast for leaders, entrepreneurs, and business with your hosts, Jose Medina and Crystal Garcia. It's time to level up. Today we have a bonus episode for our listeners and a very special co-host for this episode as well, Raquel Medina. Raquel is the co-owner of Sage and Soul, a spiritual boutique company that specializes in everything mystical and magical. Raquel was a guest on our podcast in season 1 and also published her own podcast under the Sage and Soul brand. Hi, Raquel. Glad to have you as a co-host today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Our topic is one that I'm pretty sure that we can all benefit from. How do you sell ice to an Eskimo? So first I'm going to ask, do you know what that means?
How to sell ice to an Eskimo? Yes. It sounds like we're going to be dealing with persuasion today, because if you can sell ice to an Eskimo, you can sell anything.
Yes, you can. So we're going to be looking at 6 principles of persuasion developed by the renowned psychologist and author, Dr. Robert Cialdini. His book, published in 1984, titled Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, discussed 6 principles that affect how one person can influence or persuade one another. These principles are principles that salespeople have been using for years. And you may be thinking, well, I'm not a salesperson, so why do I even need to know these 6 principles? Simple. Salespeople are using these principles to persuade you each and every day, multiple times a day. And these principles have influenced you in one way or another, regardless of whether or not you've recognized the principle being applied. Having knowledge of these 6 principles will allow you to make better purchasing decisions and life decisions, and not allow yourself to be influenced by others. It will allow you to identify the tactic that's being applied in the situation and allow you to make a more informed decision. In this undeniable level up discussion, we will give you the tools to identify when a persuasion method is being used against you and how to counteract your autopilot mode in order to make a conscious decision against the persuasion method being applied.
And here to discuss the 6 principles of persuasion is our special guest, Jose Medina. Although Jose typically hosts the Level Up podcast, today he is switching seats with me, and we'll be putting him in the hot seat this time. For those of you who don't know Jose yet or know him well, he is a 24-year Army veteran, entrepreneur, business owner, father, and now he adds grandfather to that list of hats he wears. Welcome, Jose, and thanks for allowing me to fill in for you today as we dig into your methods of persuasion.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be a guest on our podcast.
Jose, let's start with your childhood. I know firsthand, but let's give our listeners a little insight into your background and your journey. Where would you say that you grew up?
Well, I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. It was, I'm just kidding. I would say growing up, I was kind of a military brat. So my dad was in the military, and as far back as I can remember, I was always in the military environment. And I would say we lived in Alabama. I kind of have some memories about living in Alabama. Then we moved to Panama, and we were in Panama for a couple of years. But I think then we settled in California at Fort Ord in Northern California outside of Monterey. And I think that's kind of where I would say I kind of rooted myself, and I kind of call that home. But then I joined the military when I was 18, and then I kind of traveled a lot. So
did that moving around, that like bouncing around, did that impact you, like making friends, like having a sense of, like security or?
It's funny that you say that you asked that question because like I personally feel like I'm an introvert, but I know how to pretend to be an extrovert. So I think being an extrovert is part of maybe one of my superpowers because everybody thinks that I'm an extrovert and I'm like the social butterfly, but I'm really not. I really like to be by myself and I really don't like to be around a lot of people. But I don't also have never had a problem making friends either. Not because it comes easy, but because I make effort. So I kind of go out of my way and I still do that to this day. Like,
Would you say, like, during your childhood, did you grow up in a wealthy family? Did you grow up in like a good area?
Yeah, my family was loaded with crap. Yeah. We didn't have anything. It was and it's funny because I know we weren't broke. I know we weren't poor when I was little. Like we weren't really poor. My dad had a car, my mom had a car, but they both worked. I had a sister, 2 brothers. I'm the oldest out of 4. A lot of times I was left responsible for everybody when my mom was at work, and so it was kind of my deal to like take care of everybody and make sure everybody did what they were supposed to do. I think that's probably where my leadership skills come from because I was always like in charge. I was left in charge. And it's funny because I think Raquel, being my oldest daughter, she probably got a lot of that too, like always being left in charge, always being like, hey, I got to go to work. I need you to take care of your brother and your sister. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I think that happened a lot. I think that kind of causes you to mature a little faster than normal because you're just put in this position of responsibility and authority. So you're constantly in that, in that state. So all the time. So, but yeah.
What would you say is probably the most impactful thing that you experienced as a child?
The most impactful thing I think that kind of changed the direction of where I was going is when my uncle passed away. My uncle was murdered when I was like in 6th grade, 7th grade. Yeah.
Were you close to him? Why was that impactful?
I wasn't very close to him, but like we weren't like very close, but I was getting to know him and I was spending time with him. And I think he had a big influence on like some of the lessons that I learned as I got older, you know what I'm saying? In terms of how he lived his life, and he was pretty fearless and like tough dude. He was he was in a gang too. So, but I felt like the time that I spent with him was impactful to me, like as a person and how I carried myself into the future.
Did that have to do with you being bullied?
I think so, yeah, because I was bullied, but I actually stood up to him, and it's kind of a funny story. Like I was spending time with my grandmother and my uncle in Los Angeles because that's where he lived. He came home one night. My bed was in the living room. It was like a pull-out couch bed type deal. And I was supposed to be going to bed, and I was laying in bed, and he had come home late, and he turned the light on to watch TV, and he was cooking. I got up and I turned the light off, and he came back in and turned the light on, and I got up.
How old were you?
I was in 6th grade. So I was like, I don't know, how old are you in 6th grade? Like 10, 9, 10, 11? I don't know, something like that.
I'm like 12.
Like 12? Oh, I was like 12. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, like 12, 11 or 12. So then he grabbed me by my shirt and he put me up against the wall, and he was like, he like cussed at me and stuff, but I wasn't afraid of that, you know what I'm saying? And like just little pieces of lessons that I learned, like spending time with him and getting to know him, kind of developed who I eventually would become, you know what I'm saying? I think he had a big influence on changing. And then when he passed away, like that, I saw myself in that same regard, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, he died when he was 23. I'm probably going to die when I'm 23. And I acted that way. I don't have forever on this earth, so I'm just going to do what I want.
Were you a good kid? Like, did you get in any trouble?
I was one of the best kids that I knew.
That you knew? You must not know any kids.
I wasn't. I would say I was a good kid all the way until like around 7th grade. In about 7th grade, I started getting in a lot of trouble. Part of that was the bullying. I was getting bullied in 6th grade, and I was getting picked on a little bit. And it was because I had bummy clothes. I didn't have, I had an afro, and, I just, I wore the same outfit every day to school. Like, that doesn't make you very popular. I don't think my parents understood the social dynamics of the education system and how that impacts your development and how that impacts your motivation and your self-esteem. Like, and that's really important in the development of a kid. And that's something that I really considered with my kids when I became an adult and I had children. I was always thinking about how my decisions and what I did would impact them socially in school. You know what I'm saying? Like the car I drove or the clothes they wore. Like I always wanted to make sure that socially they wouldn't have a tough time because of something that I was doing. But I wasn't the most popular kid when I was in 6th grade. And then in 7th grade, I kind of had a little bit of a growth spurt. I went from being this little scrawny kid, and then I was kind of a little bit bigger, and, I was athletic, so it was a little bit different. Started getting into a lot of fights, and I love to fight. I've always loved to fight, and I don't know if that's, I was watching the Tyson special the other day, the Tyson movie on Hulu, he also got bullied
Yeah.
and became this fighter. You know what I'm saying? Like things happened in a way that he became a boxer, you know? And I feel like for some people, certain things that happen in your life make you. And they're survivors because no matter what happens, they get stronger from it. They don't get
Right.
weaker. And then there's other people that no matter what happens in their lives, they get weaker no matter what.
I think that happens in your decision. The decision
100%,
you make,
yeah.
the response you have.
Yeah, 100%. I truly believe, and I don't know if I consciously believed this when I was younger, but I consciously believe that you can't control the conditions. You can only control your response. And so my response was, all right, if they're going to bully me, I'm going to fight back. And then what ended up happening is I didn't lose any fights. So then I became the bully. You know what I'm saying? Now I'm the one that's beating everybody up because everybody beat me up. I think that's kind of how it works. And I would say that I got in a lot of trouble. You know, the grenade situation, when I was in 7th grade, I brought a grenade home to school. And it wasn't...
Man, if that happened today.
Yeah, I'd still be under the jail. I was being bullied. You know what I'm saying? And I went to somebody and I asked for some help. And the help that he gave me was a hand grenade. You know, he was like, here, take this. And I'm like, okay, how do I use it? How do I use this thing? Because I'm about to blow these 2 guys up and keep jumping me. You know what I'm saying? They're like, I'm not playing with these guys no more. I think in that experience, I got confused, right? So I think when we're young and we're growing up in a neighborhood where it's rough and tough, like it was when I was growing up, you start to associate respect and you get it convoluted with fear. So what you really want is you want people to fear you because you don't want to be a victim, right? So you don't want to be the prey, you want to be the predator, right? So what you do is you say, I want to be respected. And respected means you don't come to my street. And if you come to my street, I'm going to hunt you down and I'm going to beat your ass because you didn't come check in. This is my street. And that's a sign of disrespect. I had a song a few days ago that I put out that says, when I was young, you couldn't walk in my backyard. When I was young, you couldn't walk in my backyard. You couldn't walk across my backyard because they'll come and get me and be like, Jose, there's somebody in the backyard that just walked up the street. And I'll go out there and I'll check them. You know what I'm saying? But that's because I thought that I was garnering respect.
Right.
And what I really was doing was I was trying to make people afraid of me. But it's a mechanism to protect yourself. And so you're trying to have this air of yourself, of carrying yourself a certain kind of way, but it's a method really of persuasion, right? I'm persuading them to fear me so that they don't challenge me. But yeah, I ended up getting in a lot of trouble. I ended up getting expelled over the grenade situation, and I came back to school in 8th grade. A lot of fights, a lot of suspensions there. I went to high school, a bunch of the same, and I ended up going to Boys Town when I was about 15. I went to Boys Town after a gang member came in and pulled out a gun on me in class. At the time, I was, again, fighting a lot. And this is a guy, I broke out his front teeth, knocked him down a flight of stairs, and he came back to the school to kill me, but it didn't play out that way. So I got lucky.
That's crazy.
So you mentioned going to Boys Town. Do you think that was a situation in your life that changed the trajectory of your life?
I wish I could say that it did, but the person who helped me get to Boys Town, that was Connie Dombrowski. She was came like a mom to me, right? But it was because she knew that if I went to juvenile hall in California, that's where all my friends were. And so she was like, if this kid, and she went to the courthouse, and she spoke on my behalf, and she was like, look, if you guys send this guy to juvenile hall, like all his friends are there. Like he's gonna become worse. He's gonna be even worse than he is now. So we recommend we take him out of state where he doesn't know anybody. And I know the perfect place. Like she had connections in Boys Town, so she made some phone calls and she got me in, and she helped me get emancipated from my parents. So I got emancipated when I was 15. And around this time is when I was finding out my kid's mom was pregnant. So I had just found out she was pregnant, and I had just got sent to go to Boys Town. And I was supposed to go to Boys Town for 3 years. I was supposed to graduate from high school there. Yeah. So that was my. The judge was like, he can either go to juvenile hall for 6 months, or he can go to Boys Town for 3 years. And Boys Town was not really like a prison. It wasn't built like it wasn't set up like a prison. It's really set up like a kind of like a group home type setting. Yeah. So I ended up going there, and I wish that would have been an experience where I could have said that changed me or transformed me. But what happened is, the first day that I got there, I came straight from the block.
Right.
And I came straight from a Crip neighborhood where everybody wore blue, right? So when I show up, I'm in all blue, and everybody in the house, they're all Bloods. So I went into a home that I had to fight every day in. They put me in that house, but it was oblivious to everybody else what was going on because they didn't understand. They didn't understand what they were seeing. So, of course, when I walk in, I'm like, hey, what's up, cuz? And they're like, what's up, Blood? And I'm like, I already know I'm in a dangerous position. You know what I'm saying? I already know I'm in danger. And so I got jumped. Like I got jumped the first night that I was there. I got jumped. Of course, now instead of this being a positive experience for me, now it's a survival. I'm in survival mode. And
Take your time, Pastor.
you know, when you're 15 years old, right, and you're away from everybody that you know, and you're isolated. We just talked a little bit, you know, when we're talking about persuasion, and you're talking about dark psychology, and you're pulling somebody away from everything that they know and everything that they love, right? You're vulnerable because you don't have any connections.
You know, I heard a song the other day, and there was a part of the song that I really liked because it in the song he says, he's kind of telling his story, and he says, "In the darkness is where I learned to shine." Yeah. And I'm like, man, that's so very powerful, because you can be placed in positions where you feel like you're in the dark, when you feel like you're in a bad place, and that's where you get your power.
Yeah, it's true. What I was gonna say is when you're 15 and you're put into a situation where you're psychologically removed from everything that you know and everything that you love, right? You hope that you're put into a safe situation. And when you're not, when you're put into a situation where you have to survive, you find a way. You find a way to be resilient, right? You find a way to survive no matter what you have to do, right? And so I think that being in a situation like that, what it taught me was that I can survive anything, because I was 15. I was by myself. I was in a house full of gang members who were just attacking me all the time, you know. And of course, for like the first month, I was isolated because I didn't have any friends and I didn't know anybody, and I didn't know who was who. I didn't know who were the guys that were on my side, who were the guys that were on the other side. And I didn't know the politics of where I was at. And so it took me a minute, but, you know, it's really hard to do something like that to a kid. And I blamed Connie for it. I blamed her. Like, I hated her. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had nightmares of her every night because I felt like she threw me into a pit full of snakes. And I know now that it wasn't her intent. I know it wasn't on purpose. I know she didn't know that she had put me in a dangerous position. You know what I'm saying? But I was of a mindset of, I'm just gonna kill anybody who fucking comes towards me, right? Like, that was my mindset. I'm gonna have to murder some people in this place, because there's no way I'm not gonna be a victim. You know what I'm saying? And I fought back all the time. What ended up happening is, because of my outburst and because of my attitude, right? Because I had got jumped a couple of times from some of the kids in the home that I was in. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. I wasn't allowed to do anything because I had no privileges. You had to earn your privileges, and I wasn't earning any because I was being insolent. I was, you know, doing whatever I wanted to do because I was angry. You know, when I finally got the ability to leave the house, one of the first places that I went to was a football game. Our Boys Town had a team, is a football team, and so I went out to the football game, and I was sitting there by myself because, of course, I hadn't socialized with anybody. I didn't know who to trust, so I wasn't making any friends. You know what I'm saying? To me, everybody was an enemy at that point, right? And I even heard people talking like behind me. They were like, "This guy's not gonna make it. Like, this guy is." Because I was like of that mindset. I was like, anybody comes my way, like, I'm doing some damage. And so I'm sitting here at this football game that I did not want to go to. They forced me, right? They were like, you can't stay here. You have to come with us. Everybody's going. And so I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm watching everybody. I'm watching what's going on. One of the guys walks up to me. I see him coming my direction, and he was a blood. His name was Cameron. He walks up to me, and he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And I said, "What's up?" I thought it was gonna be another fight, you know. Yeah. And he goes, no, I just want to talk to you, man. I just want to holler at you real quick. And so he sat down next to me. So he's like, "Where you from, man? Like, where are you from?" And he's like, "Oh, you know." And so I tell him, I'm from California, I'm from Seaside. He goes, "All right." He goes, "You see that guy over there?" He goes, that guy's a crip. That guy's a crip. That guy's a crip. That guy's. And as he's pointing them out, I'm starting to see what everybody else already knows is how they're claiming who they are. It is real subtle. It's nothing like a pair of blue earmuffs on a person's left arm, or a blue bandana loop through their belt loop, or like these little small little hints of claiming your set in an environment where you're not allowed to. You know what I'm saying? So it's just very subtle. Where I'm from, Crips are always fighting other Crips. So just because they're Crips and I'm a Crip, like that doesn't make us friends, right?
Right.
And again, I didn't understand the politics of where I was at yet. I said, cool, like, you know, whatever, like, it's cool. And so he walks away. And then all of a sudden, all these guys that he didn't pointed out are now congregating and coming up to me. So again, I'm thinking, I'm about to have to fight all these guys. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm in survival mode mentally. And so when they come up to me, one of the guys that was right in the front, that kind of was like leading the pack, was a dude who came from, he was a guy from Compton. And he was a Crip. His name was Shantae. And as he walked up to me, he was like, he walked up to me with all the guys behind him, and he's like standing there looking at me. And so I stood up. I'm thinking we're getting ready to fight, right? I'm standing up. And they're looking at me, and I'm like, "What's up, cuz?" And so they just all gathered around me, and they all hugged me, and they all pulled me in. So my experience changed because now I had family. So my experience changed because now I had family there, and oh man, we fucked them bloods up, man.
What about the guy that pointed them all out?
He was he tried to stay neutral. He tried to stay out of things. He was like he was trying to change his life. And that's the thing, like I went there with the intent of leaving the street life behind. I knew I had a kid on the way. So my goal was to change. Like my goal was to be different. And when I got there, I realized that when you put negative energy out, it stays with you no matter where you go. And so even though I was trying to leave that life behind, it was still following me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And it takes a lot of time to get away from that, you know? And so there's a reason why I only lasted 6 months in Boys Town. I was supposed to be there for 3 years. They couldn't wait to kick me out because everybody who transgressed against me was met with violent force. Like we destroyed those guys. Every opportunity we could. I was full of rage and I was full of hate. And here's the politics of that I didn't know when I got there. So because we were in Nebraska, in Omaha, they considered anybody who came from California to be an OG. So me stepping in, I was the second person in command behind Shantae. And Shantae didn't want to gangbang. He wanted to be out of that life, you know what I'm saying? But I was full blown, like ready to go to war. And so my mindset was a little bit different than his. And so naturally, people gravitated to me for leadership. You know what I'm saying? And because I was always a natural leader, it was very easy to call the shots.
But also, even though you talk about the fighting and stuff and that aspect of it, wasn't there a kid who you protected during your time?
Yeah, there was a kid. His name was Donnie. And Donnie came to Boys Town because his father had got charged with sexual assault of some I don't know if it was a kid or another, but it was a girl. But and his stepmom didn't want him, and so he was brought into Boys Town, and he was like, I want to say he was like 9 or 10.
So he wasn't a gang member getting in trouble. He just
didn't have nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And so the house parents, and this is why I say you go to a place where you think you're safe, because the house parents didn't give a shit about your safety. They didn't give a shit about if you were okay. And they put him in a room by himself. A 9-year-old kid in a room by himself with predators, with people that were unscrupulous. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he's either going to get beat, he's going to get raped. You just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And knowing this, they still put him in a room by himself. And so I know what it feels like to be isolated. You know what I'm saying? I know what it feels like to not have anybody to watch my back. You know what I'm saying? So when they put him in there, so I started taking care of him. I started watching his back, and I made sure everybody left him alone. But at nighttime when he would go to sleep, I wouldn't be there. He'd be I was in another room, you know? And so what he would do is in the middle of the night, after everybody fell asleep, he would leave his room and he would come sleep on the floor by my bed. You know? Because he was scared. Not of monsters. He was scared of the kids in the house, you know? The other kids in the house. And of course, at night they would do their rounds and they would walk through the house. They would check all the rooms and stuff like that. Or early in the morning, they would come in and they would check the rooms, and they would see this kid sleeping on the floor near my bed. And so they started inquiring, like they started doing some type of an investigation, trying to figure out if I had been like sexually assaulting this kid. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm the only person in the house that was protecting him. You know, but you know that's just the way it is, man. I have always been the person that people come to for protection when they need protection, and I've always been the person that can protect people when they need that protection. I've always been a bully of bullies. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't stand when people abuse their power and then they pick on someone who's weak. Anybody can beat someone who's weak. You want to impress me? Beat somebody who's not weak. Beat somebody who's strong. Mm-hmm. Anyways, Boys Town was rough to start off with. It was rough, but then it ended up turning into something different. By the time I left, I was pretty much running things in Boys Town in terms of the gangs that were there, and they had the most amount of fights inside, once I got there, and they just couldn't control it. And so getting rid of me was a way of kind of de-escalating the things, because anytime a new blood came in, he got beat up, he got put in the hospital, and people would do it and then come tell me about it. Like, I wasn't even I didn't even have to say, hey, when this guy gets here, they would just do it. And so,
what's interesting is that right up until right before she passed away, Connie thought that was like the best group home that anybody could possibly go to ever, that it just had this astounding, reputation, and, she had no idea. So, of course, we were putting you in the hot seat today because when we discussed doing a podcast on persuasions, on the methods of persuasion, you're the only person that I could think of with the skill set that really is so powerful in this arena, that you honestly were the best person to have sit in that seat. And so what, up until this point that you've shared so far, was there ever a point in that time where you feel like you utilized any methods of persuasion, or where even if you weren't aware that that's what you were doing?
Yeah, so even in Boys Town, the fact that I came from California and that I was automatically an OG, considered an OG in that rank structure of being in Boys Town, that was authority. So that gave me the ability to influence and to persuade a lot of people that were there, that were looking for that leadership. You know what I'm saying? So it was easy to take advantage of that. And of course, everybody looked for me for guidance. And of course, my guidance was always be as violent as possible. In terms of leaving Boys Town, I feel like when I left Boys Town, my goal was to straighten my life out and fix things. And I tried to come back to California and do that in a way that allowed me to get away from the problems that I was mixed up in. I feel like there's some negative persuasive things that was used on me while I was in Boys Town. And I would say, for example, the house parents, they were very, one of the things that they said to me was you're here because your parents don't love you. You're here because nobody wants you. You're trash.
It's unfortunate.
And, yeah. That's the kind of reinforcement and the kind of persuasion that it's like dark psychology. When you talk about dark psychology, it's like you're isolating somebody and then you're making them feel bad about themselves so that you can control them in a way that's beneficial for them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If I was of a weaker mindset, that might have worked. I've always had high confidence, so that was ineffective. And even for them to do the investigation and think that I'm doing something to this kid, that was also another way of attacking me and isolating me from the other kids that were in the house and trying to break up the fact that everybody looked up to me. You know what I'm saying? Right. So I think that attempt failed, but I think it was I could see that they were trying to do something that was nefarious, and also. I staged a runaway. You know what I'm saying?
You staged a runaway?
Yeah, we were.
Was it a massive runaway?
It was massive. Yeah, it was 30 people.
That's pretty massive.
and then it ended up being a snowstorm. So we all canceled except one guy. He didn't get the memo. He ended up running. He's the only person who ran away.
Poor guy. Yeah. He ended up back, didn't he?
Yeah, he got as far as the train station, and then he called back and was like, "Somebody come get me. It's cold."
Oh man.
But yeah, I didn't know anything about persuasion then. And then I came back to California and I tried to get back to school and stuff like that. And I tried to do the things that were right, and it wasn't always right.
What happened in your life that took you outside of that that changed the trajectory for you?
I think what happened in my life that changed the trajectory of where I was going is my daughter was born. I think when Raquel was born, I became a different person. Because my whole life I'd always thought I ain't gonna live past 23, so what's the point? You know what I'm
Now
saying?
you have to. Now you have somebody you gotta protect.
But not only that, I was worried about her. Like I don't care if I died at 23, but
Right.
I didn't want her to die at 3. You know what I'm saying? And I had enemies. I had a lot of people that were not wanting to see me live past 23. So and I was worried that she would be the one to get caught in the crossfire of that. You know what I'm saying? She'd be the one that'd be targeted. And I had an opportunity to join the military, and that was definitely not something that I ever wanted to do. I had actually dropped out of school at the time. I was sitting in front of a crack house, sitting in a car, waiting for somebody to come back to the car, and I was sitting in the passenger seat, and I was supposed to be the lookout. So I'm doing a bad job as a lookout. I'm sitting in the seat, and what I'm doing is I'm looking for a song on a cassette tape, and I'm fast forwarding it. And I have a pistol sitting in my lap. I'm like, I think I was 17 at the time. All of a sudden, I get a tap on the window, and it was the recruiter. His name was Sergeant First Class Porsche. I always remember this guy's name. Porsche. He was a big old black dude. He had to be, man, to be walking through the seaside like in his uniform and whatnot. And so I rolled down the window and like, what the fuck do you want? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why are you knocking on my glass on the window? I'm supposed to be lookout. I felt like I got caught short. He says, hey man, you ever thought about joining the military? And I was like, man, get the fuck out of here. I ain't trying to join the military. So he handed me his card. He goes, well, have you ever changed your mind? Here's my card. Just give me a call back. He saw the gun in my lap. So he gives me his business card and he leaves. And I would say like maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, there was an incident where persuasion would have been useful, but I was unable to persuade something from happening. And so I ended up having to join the military after that in order to get out of the environment that I was in, because it was a pretty volatile situation. So, and I think that was the beginning of like breaking that cycle, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you think, when you look at your childhood and then you look at how, even as a young parent, automatically there's a stigma where people think, I also had kids young as well. How do you feel like your parenting or the life that you provided your kids differed from the life that you had growing up?
I think I was more connected to my kids than my parents were connected to me. I personally felt like a burden to my parents, like that we were something that was like holding them back from doing what they wanted to do. I feel like I was more connected with my kids. I was more in tune with their needs in their environment. I was less selfish I was selfish, but I was less selfish than my parents were, in terms of making sure they had what they needed, making sure they got school clothes, and like all that stuff is important to kids. Like we as parents, we don't often realize that we set our kids up for failure, to be bullied and to be picked on when we say, hey, just wear this. Like, just here's a pair of pants from Walmart. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Here's some shoes from Walmart. Here's a jacket from Walmart. Like, everybody knows your clothes all came from Walmart. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And even though it's sad, but the reality of it is that we are social people. And so when we try to fit in socially at school and you're wearing Walmart clothes or Kmart, at the time it was Kmart brand clothes, like, people are going to make fun of you. You know what I'm saying? And they're going to clown you. And you can either do one of two things. You could succumb to that, or you can overcome that. I overcame it by shoplifting and stealing and making my own money and buying my own stuff. Like, and I think that I've just been resilient like that my whole life, and I've always been a big influence on my friends because I'm the kind of person that is always gonna find a way. You know what I'm saying? So,
I definitely think that having gone through a lot of the things that you went through really plays into, somebody can go to school and learn some of these things. They can read, the book that we mentioned and learn some of those things as well. But I think that in experiencing life situations where you're forced to come up with unique responses to what's happening, that you develop some of those skills during those events.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to survive,
Yeah.
You develop a warrior mentality.
Yeah, and I think that for me it was about resiliency, and I think that I had to be resilient when I was being bullied in 6th grade. I think I had to be resilient when I went to Boys Town. And those are all small things of resiliency that as you go through those things and you overcome those things, that it can either make you a weaker person or it can make you a stronger person. Right. And because of my resiliency, like, I feel like I've been able to deal with everything else, like, in my life because of that. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing that can happen to me that is going to break me.
Right.
Like, it would take a lot. Like, you know, it would take a lot to break me. I feel no matter what situation you put me in, I'm going to survive it because I've been through any negative situation you could think of. I've been to war. I've been to, not prison, but like I'm saying a group home, like where it's, you know, and I've survived that. And I feel like life is just about overcoming obstacles and getting past them, and being able to persuade people to accept you and to change, and to be able to maneuver. A big part of influence big part of your persuasion is being able to move in multiple circles. I'm able to navigate in circles where it's in the streets. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm able to navigate in an environment where it's educated. I'm able to navigate in an environment where it's business. And that's because I can assimilate to the necessary skill sets to be able to move in that circle. I can put on the correct uniform, and then I can speak the language of that environment. The more fluidly you can do that, the better you are at maneuvering and at moving and at making things happen. When I was in running the warehouse in Stockton, California, I felt the most comfortable of all the places I've ever worked, to include the military. Of all the places I've ever been, I felt the most comfortable there because 95% of the people that were working in that warehouse had either been to prison, were in gangs, or, you know what I'm saying, came from that environment. And because of my background, I had a certain level of comfort there. I was able to do things in that environment that someone at my level as a general manager of a distribution center could never have been able to do there. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because of the connection that I had with the experience of the guys that were there trying to provide for their families. Right. You know, that they're outside of here I'm a gang member, but when I come to work, I'm a forklift driver. You know what I'm saying? And all I'm trying to do is protect my family. All I'm trying to do is pay the rent. All I'm trying to do is get food, you know? But if you don't have that experience, it's really hard for you to be to have empathy, because in your mind it's a choice. You're choosing to gangbang, but no, you're trying to stay alive. It's challenging, man. You know, coming from that background, I think I learned a lot of my skills of persuasion from that, of being able to influence people, of being able to control people in a way where, for example, there was a guy that that I got into a fight with when I was in Boys Town that ended up in the infirmary. And when he got out of the infirmary, the first thing he did was come to me and say, "I don't want this life. I don't want this to be the rest of my 3 years that I'm here. I just want a truce." And I said, "Okay, we'll set a truce. You don't disrespect me, I won't disrespect you." That wasn't the attitude of the rest of my people. Like a week later, he got jumped by my guys. And so I had to pull my guys to the side and go, "Hey, look, he's asking for a truce. We're going to give him a truce." The situation that happened when I got home that made me join the military, I had a friend of mine that he was from Stockton. He came to visit in Seaside. And when he got there, some guys up there didn't like that he was there. He was from a different neighborhood. And so they tried to kill him, you know. And he happened to be inside of my baby's mom's house. And so when they called me, they were like, "Hey, Jose, Keith is here. And everybody's outside and you're going to kill him. And if you don't come here and do something, they're going to come in the house and they're going to pull him out and they're going to murder him outside. Or they're going to murder him in the house." And I have fear that Raquel's going to get injured. She was a baby at the time. And so I went up there and I tried to convince, 30 people that were pissed off that wanted to kill this guy to let him go, and I couldn't. I couldn't convince them, you know what I'm saying? As persuasive as I was, I couldn't convince him. But I was able to convince 2 other guys to come help me take him out the house and saved his life. And had I not had the ability to do that, this guy wouldn't be here. And I had to get 2 guys that were from out of the state to come into the projects and to provide this guy who they don't even know protection. That's persuasion. They put themselves in danger for a person they don't even know because I asked them to. When I was in high school, I was the guy that people would come and say, "Hey, there's going to be a fight this afternoon. I'm going to fight so and so, and I want you to be there to make sure nobody jumps in." Because they know I'm going to make sure nobody jumps in. My word is my bond. So if I say it, it's so. And that was really my life growing up. It was like, it's not always fun. It was tough sometimes, and but it made me who I am today, and it made me resilient, and it made me strong mentally. You know what I'm saying? Like, because those things could have broken anybody. And you're right. I joined the military, and I had an amazing career. I had a couple deployments, and I learned a lot in that process too. But I think that the background, the foundation, was built, growing up and growing up the way that I did. So,
Well, I know that there's so much more to your story, but
Yeah.
you've shared a lot of stuff with us, and
Yeah.
really some very personal things. And I think that our listeners will definitely appreciate getting to know you on a much deeper level.
yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate you letting me sit in the hot seat for a little bit. And, yeah, I
No,
definitely appreciate
it's
it.
usually you poking at me, making me cry. So.
It's funny because that story is a story that I've told over and over again, but I've never really applied any emotion to it. You know what I'm saying? I've told that story, man, over 100 times of being in Boys Town, and it's not something that has ever touched me emotionally, and I don't know why it did today for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe I've just felt a little bit more vulnerable than normal, but yeah, that was a tough story to share. Boys Town wasn't a sad time for me. I kind of look at that as a Spartan moment. When they take the little baby out and you go, is this baby going to survive or not? You know what I'm saying? And if the baby survives, then he's good to go on to the next level of adulthood as a warrior. And I looked at it like that. As my whole life, I've always looked at it like that. Like that was like a rite of passage. Like I passed that level and I graduated to something different.
Right.
So I've never looked at myself like a victim. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I got jumped a couple times, but who cares? We all get jumps a couple times in life. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't an emotional story, but now when I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about it from a perspective of a dad and a grandfather, and you know what I'm saying, somebody who's
It makes you sad.
it makes me sad that somebody could be in that situation, and that people can be so ignorant to the fact that that's what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Absolutely.
and be so clueless. And I know Connie didn't intend for that to happen, and that's why I never shared it with her. I never told her that story, and it's because it's not going to change anything. She's going to feel bad for something that she had no control over.
Right.
There's no way she would have ever known. Like, I didn't know for the whole month that I was there who was who.
Right.
It took time to kind of learn that and to be in that environment to kind of figure that out. But
And psychologically, when once a child has formed their personality and kind of who they are, you can't really change that person without there being a significant emotional event.
Yeah.
And so those events that we experience throughout our journey in life are really what shape us.
yeah, I agree.
So
Why do you think you're so good at persuasion?
I think for a couple reasons. One, I'm extremely knowledgeable when it comes to logistics. If I'm doing any type of business with logistics, I can speak the lingo. Because I had that credibility of confidence and knowledge, it's very easy when I walk into a warehouse and I start speaking the lingo for everybody to go, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm immediately an expert. When you look at my resume and you go, oh, I'm Amazon, Cardinal Health, all these logistics places. Oh, 23 years in the Army in supply chain management. Okay, here's a guy who knows what he's doing. And I'll give you a perfect example of method of persuasion that I used to get a job that I shouldn't have gotten, by the way, because I got fired. But so I applied for a job, and I was meeting the vice president inside of a warehouse that was completely gutted. There was nothing in it. It was old Toys R Us warehouse. And I was meeting this guy for the very first time. And when I came in, he was interviewing me. We were interviewing at the warehouse, and we were walking and talking. And I was like, okay, well, first of all, the guy that you hire for this job, he's got a big job ahead of him. You're going to have to remove all these racks. You're going to have to open up some space over here. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to fix all these things over here. And as I'm doing this, and this is just me and him having a conversation. So he hasn't even asked me, hey, so tell me a little bit about yourself. I'm giving him a rundown, like this place is a hot mess. But I know, and then I say things like this. When I was in the military, I was able to go out and I was able to build a warehouse in the middle of the desert from nothing. So this would be nothing for me. I've created this from absolutely nothing but dirt. Having that and being a decision maker, and you're looking at that, you're saying, well, this is a guy who knows what he's doing. He's an expert. And that's just based off of confidence and also body language and, that kind of stuff. So I think that's how I've been able to do it.
You used the word confidence a few times while discussing your persuasion techniques.
Yeah.
Do you feel that confidence has a big part of persuasion, is a big factor of persuasion? Do you feel like you could persuade somebody and not be confident?
No. So I don't think you can persuade someone if you're not confident. And the reason why is because in order to persuade someone,
He's about to
right?
take my line.
I have no idea what she's talking about. In order to persuade someone, they've got to trust you, because you're not going to trust someone. If someone who doesn't know what they're doing, or someone who looks like they don't know what they're doing, you're not going to trust them. So it's going to be hard for you to just do what they say. Like if a cop came to you and said, hey guys, I think we should go over here. You're going to be like, what the hell? This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm not going where he's saying. He ain't sure. He's not sure about it. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times, and there's a process of, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of mirroring, the act of mirroring. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So in mirroring, what happens is you come in and you start moving the same way the other person's moving, and as soon as you guys synchronize, then there's a connection that's made, right? So if you rub your nose and the other person rubs their nose, you guys are now doing the same gestures together, right? Because you guys are connected by that energy, right? So what happens is if I yawn, that person will yawn. If I sit and open my chest and spread my arms, that person will kind of mimic me, right? If I'm trying to gain if I'm trying to gain a connection with someone, I will do that intentionally. It's the same thing with energy. People are attracted to high energy. They're not attracted to low energy. So what happens is when you come in with high energy, they're immediately attracted to you because they want that energy. So what happens is when you come in and you're motivated and you're enthusiastic and you're confident, that's attractive to people, like psychologically. So they immediately are attracted to you, and they're motivated by your motivation. They're excited by your excitement. You know what I'm saying? When I was at Cardinal Health, we were dealing with a customer that was extremely upset with us. And whenever I would come to those meetings, I would pump everybody up because I'm like, we're going to fix this. I understand you guys are upset. I know why you're upset, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And my energy is pumping everybody up because they're like, man, this guy's going to go in and he's going to fix this, because he knows what he's doing. He's super confident and he's super energetic. You know what I'm saying? In our podcast, when we talk about fake it till you make it, 90% of that is confidence. What you're really faking is the confidence. You're not faking like the knowledge or the technical skills or any of that. You're faking the confidence.
Even having confidence in what it is that you're trying to sell. If you're trying to sell a dish that you despise, you're not going to be very convincing.
Hey guys, I got a bowl of beans. I need you guys to buy. Nobody wants to buy a bowl of beans from somebody who hates beans, right? But if you come in and you go, man, this is the most delicious. Here's a perfect example, and you'll kind of laugh at this, Raquel, because you probably remember this. when we were living in Virginia, Raquel and I went to a fair, and when we were at the fair, there was this attraction. It was the snake lady, right? And so me and Raquel, we were really interested in seeing what the snake lady looked like. And it was $1, right? I think it was $1, right? Or something like that, right? So we went up and nobody else wanted to go and see this, but me and Raquel wanted to go see it. So we paid our $1 and we went up there and we looked inside. And basically what it was a lady's head wrapped around with a stuffed body of a snake wrapped around her head. She had braids in her hair and she's just looking at us like, what's going on, guys? And it was so ridiculous of a waste of money that we thought, man, we need everybody to waste their money to come see this. And so the way that we persuaded them is when we came down, we were extremely excited about what we had just seen. So we were like, hey, that was amazing. Wasn't that so crazy? And so everybody was like, what? It's like, man, you guys got to see that. That's the principle of persuasion of consensus, right? Mm-hmm. Which means when people around you like something, or when people around you are interested in something, it's more likely for you to be also interested in that thing as well. And so when they saw that we had enjoyed it and they saw that we gave it good remarks and thumbs up, they went and they all paid their $1 to go see the snake lady. And it was hilarious to watch them walk up there knowing what they were going to be so disappointed.
Uh-huh. And also, I feel like they persuaded us because it was like we were intrigued to see what they did to create the snake lady. And you couldn't see through it, and it had all these like words on the trailer and everything. And so they really got your interest. And so when we kind of got played, we were like we were were so disappointed. We needed to share the disappointment with other people.
But yeah, I think the energy is what kind of draws people, and I think I'm very likable. I'm very polite. I don't talk bad to people. I am not a negative person. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always bring the best energy that I can to every situation. And so Crystal was saying earlier today, we had lunch earlier today, and one of the things that she said was that people like being around our energy. A lot of times when we're in a room, the room is different because we're in it. Because the energy that we bring is high energy. It's motivational. It's we can do it. We can accomplish this. We can work hard. It's an air of success. It's an air of accomplishment. You know what I'm saying? When we leave the room, that energy leaves with us. And there are people in the world that are like that have that kind of energy. And when they walk into a room, you're immediately pumped up. And that makes you likable. People like that. So they like you. And when they like you, they trust you.
That is so true.
It's true.
Likability has a huge part to
100%.
do with persuasion, I believe.
Yeah. Here's a thing I'm going to tell you about myself that it's kind of funny. So I don't get speeding tickets. I haven't gotten a speeding ticket in like more than 10 years, right? But I've been stopped a lot of times. And a lot of times what I do is when I get pulled over, I immediately try to find a way to make this police officer like me enough to not give me a ticket. And the way that I do that is, 1, I'm polite. 2, I'm helpful, right? If I can be helpful, I'm helpful. 3 is I try to find some common bond. And I'll tell you share a little story. I was in New Mexico and I was driving to the airport. And I was going to fly out of New Mexico I was driving from El Paso. And I was definitely 100% speeding. I was probably going like maybe 85, 90 miles an hour. And the cop said he had been tailing me for like 5 miles, and I hadn't realized it before he pulled me over. And when he pulled me over, he was really upset. He was pissed off. And he came to the window, and he was like, "Give me your driver's license. You know how fast you were going?" And I said, "No, I really wasn't paying attention. I'm pretty sure I was going over 80. I was honest, I was going over 80, probably 85. He goes, "No, you was going over 100. And I was like, "There's no way I was going over 100. He said, "Tell it to the judge. I don't want to hear it. Tell it to the judge. Give me your driver's license." And so I went in my wallet, I pulled out my driver's license, and I pulled out my military ID, right? I gave them both to him. He took the driver's license, and he looked at it, and he said, "Nobody asked you for your ID, Master Sergeant," and he gave me back my ID card, right? So immediately from that conversation, I understood that he understood rank, right? So I knew he had served somewhere, right? In some kind of capacity. I knew, and he walked away to go give me my ticket, right? And so he got the ticket, he wrote the ticket, and then he walked back to my car to give me the ticket. And as he's handing me my driver's license, I said, "Man, I just got a quick question for you, man. I saw that you recognized my rank on my military ID. I'm like, did you serve?" And he was like, "Yeah, I served." He was still mad. "Yeah, I served. What?" And I'm like, "Did you deploy when you served? Did you deploy?" He was like, "Yeah, I deployed." I said, "Where'd you go? Were you in Iraq?" He was like, "Yeah, I was in Iraq." I said, "Dude, I was in Iraq." And he was like, "You were in Iraq?" And I was like, "Yeah." I said, "Where were you? What base were you at?" And so he told me. He was like, "I was on Liberty. I was on Camp Liberty." I said, "Dude, I was right across the street from you on Camp Slayer." And he was like, "Holy shit, you were in Slayer?" I was like, "Yeah." What year were you there? So when we started having this conversation, and he likes me, right? Because we share a common story. We share a common experience. We've been to the same place. We both have a military connection. Like, we both have a deployment connection. And so he goes, "Tell you what I'm gonna do, man. I'm not going to give you this ticket.
Wow.
This is what I want you to do, man. I want you to go back to your unit when you get back and to tell all your soldiers that in your unit not to speed when they come through New Mexico." And I said, "Man, trust me, I got you, bro. As soon as I get back, that's what I'm going to tell them." And so he didn't even give me a warning ticket. All right.
Sounds like he was annoyed that he pulls over soldiers a lot. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, he might have been. That's the epitome of likability. That's how you get someone to like you. And as soon as you build a bond with someone, then it's really hard for them to tell you no. And so if you can find a way to connect with somebody, then it's easier to persuade them to, do what it is you want. And even that situation, it wasn't nefarious. It wasn't like I was trying to take his gun or what I'm saying? Like, I wasn't persuading him to give me his weapon or, something like that. But it's all about persuading him to not give me a ticket. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not a bad guy. I just made a bad decision. You know what I'm saying? Help me out here, so.
And you still missed your flight.
Yeah, I did. I missed my flight. It was terrible. A lot of times when we're traveling, Crystal will have me go and talk to, the airline desk in order to get them to sit us together, like, because she knows I'll come in and I'll immediately get a good connection and convince them to, do whatever we want. Now, it doesn't always work. Sometimes
but somehow,
it's impossible.
He always puts me in the position of bad cop. I don't know why, because I'm not bad cop, but somehow I always end up being bad cop.
I'm gonna tell you why. So this is the way the bad cop good cop system works, right? This is also a method of persuasion, believe it or not. So what happens is your brain has to have consistency, okay? So when you get to playing good cop bad cop, what happens is the person comes in with the bad cop mentality, right? Bad cop, bad cop, bad cop, bad cop, bad cop, and then so the person that you're interacting with is on the defense because you're coming at them, right? So they're defensive, and all of a sudden you get the guy who comes in who's all cool. He's like, "Hey man, I know she's mean, I know, but look, all we want is this one thing to get done, and if you do this won't even be a problem." And so because he's off put, mentally can no longer be defensive. He's confused now. He doesn't know what to do. So it messes with his mind. And so you have a higher propensity to get an agreement, you know what I'm saying, off the good cop, bad cop. She's just naturally a bad cop. It got nothing to do with me. She's a bad cop and she plays her role well. And so sometimes I have to be the good cop. I'm the one playing the role. But here's the thing. You can't have two bad cops. Because you won't get what you want. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to persuade nobody being two bad cops. So, yeah. And I think Crystal and I, we're very good at kind of playing off each other. Typically, when I'm upset, she's not. And when she's upset, I'm not. So, we're able to, play good cop, bad cop pretty good. When we have to.
That's true.
That's a great persuasion teamwork that you guys got going on there.
That's it. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. You know what I'm saying?
Aesop says persuasion is often more effective than force. Before we begin looking at the 6 principles of persuasion, it is important to understand the difference between persuasion and manipulation. These two topics are very close cousins to each other. Persuasion is the action or fact of motivating someone to do or believe something. Manipulation, on the other hand, can be defined as the action of controlling someone in a clever or unscrupulous way. What are your thoughts on these two different definitions? What are your thoughts on dark psychology?
I honestly think that people could perceive persuasion as being either one in almost any given situation, because you can have a positive impact and a negative impact as far as two people are concerned when you're utilizing methods. So if you're selling something and you get somebody to buy something that they really didn't want to buy and they spent their money, they could be looking at that as you manipulated them and think that you were somehow trying to control them and they kind of fell into it. How do you kind of say, well, you're manipulating, you're not persuading?
For me, it's manipulation is a win-lose interaction. So in manipulation, you win and the other person loses. In persuasion is a win-win type. That's how I look at it. So in persuasion, for example, you're in the market for a car. I'm in the market to sell a car. So if I get you to buy my car, I've persuaded you. You got a car that you want, or that, you got a car that
you didn't want.
Well, if you
that's a win.
Yeah. Now, if the car has a problem that I'm covering up and I've given you a junker, then that's a win-lose. That's a manipulation. Right. Yeah. So even in the same scenario, it's the outcome that determines whether it was a manipulation or a persuasion. Because if you're in the market for a car and I sell you a car and you get what you want, even though like you might have bought that other car, you know what I'm saying? If you never ran into me, you may have. And then this happened to me when I was talking to you about the story about the first time I ever bought a car with 0 miles on it. I was persuaded. I was in the market to buy a car. I went there to buy a car. And what he did was he said, "Hey, why are you buying a used car? Why don't you buy this brand new one? This really nice, shiny one. And as a matter of fact, here are the keys. Go drive it, right? And you keep it for the weekend. Come see me on Monday. And if you don't want it, I'll take it back." Well, that was a method of persuasion. I didn't understand the psychology of it at the time, but that's how I got roped into buying that car. That I was in the market for a car and I ended up getting a car. I didn't feel bad about the purchase, you know what I'm saying? But then years later, when I'm looking back at it, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is where it went wrong. This is why I ended up getting pulled into that purchase, because he was in the market to sell a new car and I was in the market to buy a used car. So, but yeah, it was still a win-win. I still ended up with a car and he still ended up selling one.
I definitely love that example of you buying a car, and even how you explained it as a win-win or win-lose, because a lot of times people can find other people manipulative, but I think that it could be persuasion. They just don't really realize the difference of manipulation and persuasion.
Right.
Um,
If you walk away
But
from,
are they going to think it's manipulation if they got to win?
no, you won't, because you won't even think about it.
what are your thoughts on dark psychology?
Dark psychology is psychological manipulation of people in a way where they don't know they're being manipulated. Dark psychology is like gaslighting, hypnotism, obviously manipulating. When you're creating a situation where it's a win-lose. For example, Bernie Madoff, when he did that scandal, like what he was doing was dark psychology. Now he's using method of persuasion, but for negative, nefarious reasons. Let's say, for example, I'm a controlling person and I want to be able to control Crystal and do whatever I want. I start off by separating her from her family. Hey, your family's nothing. Your family's garbage. I don't want your family around here. I don't want your sister here. I don't want your brothers here. So now I've isolated her, right? So now she has no one but me. And then I start telling her, you're not good at this. You're not good at that. You're not good at this. You're never good at that. Like now I'm breaking down her self-esteem. That's all dark psychology in the works, because all you're trying to do is you're trying to make this person act the way that you want them to act in a way that you want them to be, obedient. I want you to be home. I want you to be obedient. I want you to do exactly what I say. That's a method of dark psychology. The person who's being manipulated loses everything.
So would you say that dark psychology is definitely manipulation?
100% manipulation. And it's always for nefarious reasons. It's always so that the person who's exercising it has the ability. And you know what? It could be a lawyer. A lawyer can use dark psychology when they go, hey guys, if you look at it from this perspective, this is what it looks like. But if you turn the camera around over here, now look at it. You know what I'm saying? Now you're trying to insert doubt, because you're trying to make this person think the way you want them to think, so that the jury votes your way. You know what I'm saying? Anyone can use dark psychology. Let's say, for example, commercials to sell you medication, right? When they go, and these are the side effects, and you don't really get to hear it all. You know what I'm saying? So you all you hear is the benefits of it. I love dark psychology.
You love dark psychology.
It's my favorite.
So, the first universal principle of influence is reciprocity. Simply put, people are obliged to give back to others the form of behavior, gift, or service that they have received first. If a friend invites you to their party, there's an obligation for you to invite them to a future party you are hosting. If a colleague does you a favor, then you owe that colleague a favor. And in the context of a social obligation, people are more likely to say yes to those that they owe. One of the best demonstrations of the principle of reciprocation comes from a series of studies conducted in restaurants. So the last time you visit a restaurant, there's a good chance that the waiter or waitress will have given you a gift, probably at about the same time that they bring your bill. A liqueur perhaps, or a fortune cookie, or perhaps a simple mint. So here's the question: does the giving of a mint have any influence over how much tip you're going to leave them? Most people will say no, but that mint can make a surprising difference. In the study, giving diners a single mint at the end of their meal typically increased tips by around 3%. Interestingly, if the gift is doubled and 2 mints are provided, tips don't double. They quadruple, a 14% increase in tips. But perhaps most interestingly of all is the fact that if the waiter provides 1 mint, starts to walk away from the table, but pauses, turns back, and says, "For you nice people, here's an extra mint," tips go through the roof. A 23% increase, influenced not by what was given, but how it was given. So the key to using the principle of reciprocation is to be the first to give and to ensure that what you give is personalized and unexpected.
So the first principle of persuasion is reciprocity. Reciprocity relies on our need for equality and balance. This is governed by Adams' equity theory, which theorizes that as humans, we have a tendency to require fair and equal treatment when either giving or receiving a service, a product, or our time. Whenever we find ourselves out of balance, it makes us feel uncomfortable and uneasy. This method of persuasion is used when someone offers you a gift or a free sample of a product, like a rainbow vacuum, a Kirby vacuum, the people at the kiosks in the mall. When someone gives you something, Adam's equity theory requires that we return the favor. Salespeople often use this principle when they offer you a free sample, a gift, or even a mint at the end of your dinner when the bill's coming out. If someone sends you a birthday card, it is likely that you'll feel the urge to send one back. Have you ever used this principle to entice someone to either purchase a service or provide them something, some act in kind? And have you ever felt victim before?
Yeah, I have, and I think we all have. For example, and this is going to sound a little crass, but what do you think it is when you go out on a date and you take your date out and you buy her dinner and take her to the movies and you're like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's all you're giving. You're paying for it. Like, you know what I'm saying? And the expectation is something at the end of the night. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's one method.
Yeah, I'm gonna grant you a second date.
Yep.
There's no second date. You have one chance to win. No, but yeah, I've used that in terms of I think we all use it in terms of things like that, and also like in business where we do gift bags. Like when we were promoting the company, one of the things that we did was we created this little bag that had these little masks in it, and it had some pens and with the logo of the business, and that's all part of the reciprocity process of going in and saying, hey, we're bringing this to you so that you can consider our business. You know what I'm saying? And if you get to the right person will make the decision to call you back and let you know.
You know, I was a young single mom. I had 5 kids by the time I was 18. You won't see one of those shows. But, you know, obviously I didn't have a lot of money because I had a lot of kids. And
you had no money.
And, you know, back when you could write checks and they'd bounce, man, I had so many bounce checks. But we had somebody come to the door. And I used to hate it when people would come to the door because I always felt obligated to listen to their speech, let them show me their products because I'm like trying to be supportive. Now I'm like, I don't want whatever it is you got. I don't want it. I don't even let them. They're wasting my time, and I feel like that's wasting my money. You're wasting my time and my money. I can better handle that today. But I had somebody come to the door one time, and he had this cleaner. It was clear as can be, looked like he made it. It was in a little squirt bottle that looked like he got from Home Depot. And I don't even remember what the name of the product was, but he showed me it could clean the hood of my car. It could clean the wheels on my car. It could clean plastic. It cleaned everything, right? It was a magical cleaner. I didn't need a magical cleaner, but I bought it and I bounced a check to buy it.
That is terrible. That is a terrible story.
And so I let him go
manipulation.
through. Yeah, I let him go through his whole spiel. He was super animated. I'm like, man, this guy deserves a sale, and I bounced a check for it.
That's terrible.
It was terrible.
That's
and you know
terrible.
what? I never used that cleaner.
And now he done clean your one of your headlights. He done clean like one of your tires, and you're just like, oh, he did all this work.
Yeah,
I owe him now. I owe him to buy this. So that was definitely 100% a method of persuasion from a salesperson for sure. What about you, Raquel? You ever experienced anything like that?
Oh yeah.
Who got you?
But you know what? The good question is the big question is, did you realize it at the time?
So I have a few examples. One example that a guy really got me is when there was these young boys. They were going around the neighborhood trying to sell, I guess, books to make extra money. And I think they were part of like the sales thing. They were part of like a underdeveloped youth group or whatever. Well, the boy came. He was like, "Hey, can you buy a book package or whatever to support us?" And I was like, "I really don't have no money or whatever." He was like, "Come on, man, it's my birthday." I didn't believe him. And so I said, if it's really your birthday, then I'll buy a book. He took out his ID and it was really his goddamn birthday.
Wow. Got you.
I felt like, because of that little honest part, I felt like the rest of his story, he was being
had to be honest.
about.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I bought a set of encyclopedias.
Have you ever used one? No.
No, they never even showed up to my door. Never got them. I got played by the birthday boy.
That's probably a fake ID. He probably got so many people that day that same story.
He probably does. But honestly, that part when he said it was his birthday and he showed me his ID to prove it to me, it got me.
Yeah.
Another time I was in Jamaica, and I don't like people giving me, if I walk past, no, I don't need to wash my hands. I don't need to use your scrub. You don't need to spray your perfume on me, because people get me, and I know it's easy for them to get me. So I try to avoid all of that. I don't like being sold to at all.
Yeah.
But when we were in Jamaica, man, they were relentless.
They come up out of the water.
They were telling me just take what I want and come back and pay. And I knew that if I took their products, I would have came back and paid, because I understand that they're trying to make a living.
Yeah.
And I had to get out of there, and I never went back because I didn't take anything. I told them, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing that. They were like, but they also knew that, hey, if she takes this, there's a stronger likelihood of her coming back and paying.
Yeah.
10 times the price that I could get it from at another location. Yep. But they were really working me hard, and it was nerve-wracking.
It is. But as long as you know what the technique is that they're using, then and you're not being sold by the technique. So what happens with persuasion, with all methods of persuasion, is a majority of our time we spend on autopilot. So we're not really thinking about what's going on. So when someone starts using a method of persuasion on you, you don't recognize it because you're not thinking about it. So what you have to teach yourself to do is you need to teach yourself to stop and identify the method of persuasion that's being used. And as soon as you can do that, then you can make a conscious decision on whether you want it or whether you don't want it. Maybe you do want it. Maybe you want that cleaner. Maybe your tires are dirty and this is the wonder sauce that cleans the tires, But as long as you're not on autopilot and just being reflexive in terms of your responses based off the method of persuasion, you're not going to get got. You're going to come out of the deal with exactly what you want. So I think that's a really important part of it in order to avoid getting caught up like that. So
definitely.
The second universal principle of persuasion is scarcity. Simply put, people want more of those things they can have less of. When British Airways announced in 2003 that they would no longer be operating the twice-daily London-New York Concorde flight because it had become uneconomical to run, sales the very next day took off. Notice that nothing had changed about the Concorde itself. It certainly didn't fly any faster, the service didn't suddenly get better, and the airfare didn't drop. It had simply become a scarce resource, and as a result, people wanted it more. So when it comes to effectively persuading others using the scarcity principle, the science is clear. It's not enough simply to tell people about the benefits they'll gain if they choose your products and services. You'll also need to point out what is unique about your proposition and what they stand to lose if they fail to consider your proposal.
The second principle of persuasion is scarcity. This principle relies on a person wanting something more, as there is less and less of it. Salespeople use this principle when they say things like, only a few left at this price, or calling something limited edition. A limited edition means there's only a few available, and when it's gone, there is no more. Also, collector's items rely on this principle as well. Have you ever used the principle of scarcity, or were you ever the victim of the principle of scarcity?
I think I've been gotten a couple times with scarcity.
I don't think I've been gotten with scarcity, but I definitely have seen it.
Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever did what do they call that?
Black Friday sales.
Black Friday sales.
Black Friday?
No.
You've never done that before?
No.
That's definitely a scarcity.
Yeah.
Where have you seen it done?
The one that I think's the funniest, and I don't even understand how people get got with this one, but the business that's always going out of business sale.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Y'all just stay going out of business for 5 years straight.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Yeah, I've been gotten by that too. It's really hard for scarcity not to get me, and especially for example, when it's something that I want, or something that I'm interested in getting, and I'm trying to make a decision mentally, like whether I want to buy it or not. But like, it's only limited time. I gotta get it now.
You know,
You know.
where people do this a lot
Where?
is in selling houses.
Oh yeah,
because they'll
100%.
be like, "Look, guys, we're gonna have 10 offers on the table
Yeah.
tonight," and so they try to push you to put in an offer.
Yep.
You know, and maybe it ain't even the house you really love, but you're like, "Oh, I may not find a house that looks similar to this. I don't love it, but."
You know, something that car salespeople do is, or when people are selling their cars, what they'll do is they'll schedule a time for you, or even apartments or houses. They'll schedule a time for you to show up, like an open house. And so when you have like 5 or 6 different people in a house and they're all looking at the same house, you feel like if you don't move first, you're going to lose the opportunity. Oh, there's 5 other people that are interested in this house. Like, if I don't get it, like, they're going to get it. And that's also a way to drive up costs too, because now you create a bidding war.
I definitely have experienced this with things that are limited edition because I'm like, wow, I want the opportunity to experience this. It's like the fear of being left out, kind of.
100%, yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely have.
What do you have today that is limited edition?
What do I have today?
Yeah, do you have anything today that was limited edition?
Looking around. Well, I think I got this TV on sale at a Black Friday.
You know, we were doing a podcast with Jules when we were talking to Jules, and one of the things that he said is like his dad keeps buying TVs.
Oh, that's right.
Remember?
That's so
he says,
funny.
"Man, every time I come to my dad's house, he's got a new TV, and it's probably the same thing. Like, hey, it's on sale for like $300. It's 70-inch TV, but you don't need a 70-inch TV. You've got 4 at home. Like, you know what I'm saying?
My dad used to go to the store, and my mom would send him with a list of like 4 items to get, and he would come back a couple hours later. And he done bought like 100 cans of green beans that were on sale.
Yeah, that's what happens, man. And I know a lot of people that fall into that kind of mindset of, oh, it's on sale, so I have to get it. I'm saving so much money. You're so afraid to not save the money that you end up spending the money you don't have. You know what I'm saying? So it's really important for you to understand when they're using that strategy to go, okay, this is a scarcity. So and the scarcity doesn't even have to be real. It's not. Right. It may not even be a real shortage. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're just making it seem like Crystal said,
like toilet paper.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Imagine the companies of the toilet paper companies that were out there saying, "Hey guys, there's no more toilet paper." You got a whole warehouse full of toilet paper, just run up the rates.
Our third principle of influence is the principle of authority, the idea that people follow the lead of credible, knowledgeable experts. Physiotherapists, for example, are able to persuade more of their patients to comply with recommended exercise programs if they display their medical diplomas on the walls of their consulting rooms. People are more likely to give change for a parking meter to a complete stranger if that requester wears a uniform rather than casual clothes. What the science is telling us is that it's important to signal to others what makes you a credible, knowledgeable authority before you make your influence attempt. Of course, this can present problems. You can hardly go around telling potential customers how brilliant you are, but you can certainly arrange for someone to do it for you. And surprisingly, the science tells us that it doesn't seem to matter if the person who introduces you is not only connected to you, but also likely to prosper from the introduction themselves. One group of real estate agents were able to increase both the number of property appraisals and the number of subsequent contracts that they wrote by arranging for reception staff who answered customer inquiries to first mention their colleagues' credentials and expertise. So, customers interested in letting a property were told, "Lettings? Let me connect you with Sandra, who has over 15 years' experience letting properties in this area." Customers who wanted more information about selling properties were told, "Speak to Peter, our head of sales. He has over 20 years' experience selling properties. I'll put you through now." The impact of this expert introduction led to a 20% rise in the number of appointments and a 15% increase in the number of signed contracts. Not bad for a small change informed from persuasion science that was both ethical and costless to implement.
So the third principle of persuasion is authority. This principle claims that we are unconsciously moved to follow those who are in position of authority based on the person's perceived knowledge, experience, and expertise. This is due to our innate trust that is developed in us as children. As we get older and we're exposed to levels of authority such as teachers, police officers, doctors, coaches, etc., throughout our early development, we develop a high level of trust in authoritative figures. This is why no one questions a person in a reflective vest, a clipboard, or a person in hospital scrubs with a stethoscope around his neck. We associate the costume of authority and assign it with trust very willingly. Have you ever used a position of authority to persuade others? You told us that earlier.
Yeah.
Has this ever been used on you?
I think it's been used on me.
Oh.
I think that I have once paid a random guy to park my car in a parking lot.
How'd you get your keys back?
Yeah. He was like, there's a $10 fee. He had a vest on. And I paid him $10 to park my car. And
In a public parking lot?
yeah. And I've gone through that parking lot several times, and there's never been anybody there collecting money ever.
Man,
So
you're lucky you
I
didn't get your car
definitely-
stolen.
Yeah. No,
Oh,
seriously.
my God.
But yeah, he had and it was just a reflector vest, and he was like, hey, there's an event going on. You got to pay for this parking spot. And I believed him. The authority that I saw the costume, and it instantly made me trust him. And I thought that, hey, here's my $10, sir. Thank you for letting me park here.
So back, I would say like in the 80s, there would be stories that would come out of police who would pull women over and assault them. Some of them were in unmarked cars, and so they started saying like, "Hey, don't pull over if somebody's in an unmarked car. Like, you don't have to pull over for somebody who's in an unmarked car," because there was all these different things that were happening from women getting assaulted, kidnapped, and some even murdered. It was that authority that was causing for them to take an action that they wouldn't have taken otherwise. If somebody gets behind you and is trying to get you to pull over, and there's some random person, you're not going to pull over. But if you think it's a cop and you're supposed to trust a cop, I'm going to pull over. So
You're not supposed to trust a cop. You've been brainwashed to respond to his uniform. You're not supposed to trust him.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
right.
And here's the even worse scenario. When I was deployed to Afghanistan, right before we had gotten there, they had a situation where a suicide bomber had dressed up as a Afghan police general. We had multiple gates to get into our compound. And so when he walked to the first gate, he said, I'm a general. And he just walked past the guy, and the guy let him go because he was a general. He didn't stop him and check his credentials. But when he got to the second gate, they wouldn't let him in the second gate, and that's where he detonated. So,
wow.
but if he would have gotten past that second gate, he would have detonated inside of the American compound. The first gate was the police. The second gate was the Afghan soldiers, and then there would have been our gate. In that scenario, the first guy fell victim to the fact that he was in the uniform, and that was a costume. It doesn't matter. You can't just blatantly trust what you see all the time. Sometimes you have to question it. If somebody showed up to your house and you looked through your window and they're in a police uniform, you can't really trust that. It's midnight. You're alone. You don't know who this guy is. Are you going to open the door? Like, that's something you really have to think about. You know what I'm saying? Because how better to get a lady home who's all by herself to open her front door rather than dress like a cop?
Yeah. I've seen many videos on TikTok recently of people doing home invasions, and they're using somebody, and they're going like banging on the door, like a woman saying that her husband is like just abused her and crying and saying, please, look, can I use your phone? I don't have anything. And the people would open their door, and then from the side of the house, other people would come and do a home invasion into the house.
Yeah.
I've even seen people pretending like they're delivering pizza or something.
Yeah.
Or an Amazon package or FedEx. Like, it's easy to get a pair of brown shorts and a brown button up and a brown box, and hey, I got your FedEx package. As soon as you open the door, now you're a victim. You know what I'm saying? Here's the bad thing: is that 90% of the time, it's not an issue. It's that one time when you're just not paying attention, your guard's down, you look out the window, you go, oh, it's the FedEx guy, or hey, it's the UPS guy, and you open the door, and now you're a victim. So it's always important to understand, what method of persuasion is being used so that you don't fall victim to it.
Even in business, you'll have people who, if you go into a place and you see somebody decked out in a really nice suit, you assume that they have a higher position in whatever business that is. They're decked out. They must be, a high level. So you could be, you could be at a bank upset about a situation that occurred, asked to speak to a manager, and this person who just happens to be dressed nice comes over to talk to you, and they're not even in charge of anything, but you think that uniform means that they have some position of authority.
Yeah, 100%. You also see it on the videos when they, the YouTube videos when they're doing the gold digger pranks. Because here they're flipping the script, right? They're flipping the script. They're getting out of costume, right? Their costume is now I'm broke or I'm homeless or I don't have a job. They're trying to talk to these women that are very, very attractive, and then when the women shoot them down because they're looking at their uniform and going, "Oh, you're a skateboarder? I'm not. Where am I gonna ride on your skateboard?" And all of a sudden he walks over to a Lambo and throws a skateboard in a Lamborghini. They're using the same concept in that situation. They're just reversing it. The costume is different. It's important to understand that, and a lot of times you'll see. As soon as you believe someone's in a position of authority, like for example, if we're all sitting in a room and we don't know anybody and we're just there, and somebody comes in and starts, has a clipboard or it has a loud voice and say, "Hey, I want all the people who are wearing red shorts to come over here to the left side." You'll just get up and do it because the person is now in a position of authority. Whether that person is actually in charge or not, you don't know. You just assume that he is because of the authority. So.
Listen, if you got a clipboard, you didn't memorize your responsibilities.
One time I was astral projecting, and I was taken by some cops, and I was put into like this room, and I realized that I only went with them. Like I only followed along with that, even though I was completely aware, was because I felt like they had control over me, but it was really like me mental. It was a mental control. Yeah. It wasn't a physical control.
Right.
And I thought that was really interesting after I had that experience, because I was like, you can do anything when you're astral projecting. Like no one has control over you.
Right.
But I allowed them to have control over me.
That's also in life.
Yeah, that's also in life.
Yeah, 100%.
It's so interesting.
Was it because of the uniform?
And it probably was all of it. It was probably the uniform. It was probably just the idea of this is a cop. They have, authority over this land, when that's not reality.
Right.
They only have the authority that you give them.
Right.
100%.
Only anybody has the authority that you give them.
100%. Yep. 100%.
I
think one of the hardest.
It took me going through that to realize that.
Yeah.
Even here, like if you listen to a cop, it's because you're giving them authority over you for that moment.
Yep, 100%. Yep, absolutely. One of the hardest things to teach kids is to not trust authority.
And it's really sad that you have to do that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I struggled with when you guys were little and you guys were small was constantly reminding you guys that if a cop pulls you over, don't talk to him. If a cop pulls you, don't go with him. You know what I'm saying? I was always constantly reminding you guys. And even with Alicia now, I'm like, just because they're an adult doesn't mean that they're good or they're going to do the right thing. Do not trust somebody. And if they try to, do something like to you, like, don't go along with it. Adults are also bad. Like police are bad. Teachers are bad. Like there are bad people out there in all kinds of uniforms.
Yep, that's true.
Costumes. One of the things that I think that's really important to know too, and before we go to the next question, is that sometimes in business, the costume is like a suit. And that's why I always say you have to dress for the job that you want. Because let's say I was go meet with a customer and I was to show up in jeans and a tank top, they're not going to take me serious because I'm in the wrong costume. Sure. So sometimes you have to wear the costume that's appropriate for the scenario that you're in. You can't always be in what's comfortable. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you got to put on the costume and you have to play the role. And that's part of being able to fit into that space.
Yep. I just told Cecilia the other day, my sister, that the biggest gangs wear suits.
Yep. 100%. Yep.
And those are the ones that you feel like, oh, they have the authority, they have the power, they have the money, they have the intelligence, but it's really just their costume. And they could have none of that, and they could be the scummiest, dirtiest people, manipulating you. And you think like, oh, he has a nice smile, he wears glasses and a suit.
Yep.
And what's funny is that people will you'll hear people say, oh, that person looks like a thug. They're sagging their pants. They're talking slang. And they have no idea that that person is a far less threat than the person in the suit who's manipulating a lot of people.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
true.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
was one of my friends. He was telling me about a relationship that he was in, and he was telling me that the girl he was attracted to, like she had her stuff together. Like she had her own car, she had her own house, she had name brand, she had the Gucci and the Louis Vuitton and all of this stuff. And then he started dating her, and then he found out her house was in foreclosure and her credit cards were maxed out, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so she had this image or this persona of success, and the reality underneath was that it was all rotten. It's like a house with a bad foundation. Man, that's a beautiful house, but your foundation's cracked. Like it's a perception. It's just an image. It's not the reality.
You know, and I think it's funny now that people post a lot on social media about, like, Adam Sandler. I've seen people post pictures of Adam Sandler saying, you know, he's worth this much money and look at how he's dressing, and he's like in basketball shorts all the time and, you know, frumpy t-shirts, and he's not dressed, you know, in a bunch of name brand stuff. Same with Jeff Bezos and with, you know, Bill Gates. You know, you don't see them decked out in Gucci, and, you know, they're wearing normal clothes, and, you know, they're blending in unless you know who they are.
Yeah.
That's so true.
The next principle is consistency. People like to be consistent with the things they have previously said or done. Consistency is activated by looking for and asking for small initial commitments that can be made. In one famous set of studies, researchers found, rather unsurprisingly, that very few people would be willing to erect an unsightly wooden board on their front lawn to support a Drive Safely campaign in their neighborhood. However, in a similar neighborhood close by, 4 times as many homeowners indicated that they would be willing to erect this unsightly billboard. Why? Because 10 days previously, they had agreed to place a small postcard in the front window of their home that signaled their support for a Drive Safely campaign. That small card was the initial commitment that led to a 400% increase in a much bigger but still consistent change. So, when seeking to influence using the consistency principle, the detective of influence looks for voluntary, active, and public commitments, and ideally gets those commitments in writing. For example, one recent study reduced missed appointments at health centers by 18%, simply by asking the patients rather than the staff to write down appointment details on the future appointment card.
The fourth principle of persuasion is commitment and consistency. People have a need to act consistent with their values and ideas. When they act outside of those values, they feel disconnected and uneasy. In persuasion, this theory can be applied by having someone do something small, like fill out a survey in the grocery store. Stopping and filling out the survey may seem like an innocent task, but then they ask you to sample a product. This is also a small task, and so you comply again. Due to your need to remain consistent with agreeing. Finally, they ask you to purchase the product. You may actually like the product and buy it, but would you have bought the product without persuasion? Has this principle ever been used on you? And if so, how? Do you think that it's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think this has definitely been used on me before when I didn't know about persuasion. I think now it's not easily applied on me. But in the past, I wouldn't even have known this was being used on me. And it happens like we were just talking about a little while ago, when you're like going into, let's say, for example, a grocery store, and they're like, hey, come over here and try this. Here, buy this box. Like, you know what I'm saying? Once you do something, you have a tendency to continue to do it. For example, if you're getting on a bus, right, and there's a lady in front of you, and she's struggling with her bag, and you grab her bag from her, right? You say, oh, you put it inside the bus. Then when you get in the bus, she goes to put it up in the rack, right? You're going to take it again, right? Because you just did it. So you're going to take it again, you're going to put it in the rack. And then when she's getting ready to get off, guess what you're going to do? You're going to stand up, you're going to get it, and you're going to pull it down. Because you're being consistent. You've already helped her one time. You're not now going to sit there and watch her struggle because it's inconsistent with your actions, you know what I'm saying? So it's going to make you feel uncomfortable to be that way. But I definitely use this when I'm either doing business, when I'm trying to get to a certain end, I also use this as well. This principle is one of the principles that's seen in that one show that we watched. I don't know if you guys remember watching the show where the guy gets somebody to commit
About
murder.
the persuasion.
Yeah. And the way that they do it is that he gets him to do a small thing. He goes like, hey, I was supposed to buy the cookies with no gluten, but I bought the wrong kind. Will you help me sort these out? And it's wrong, right? Because now I'm going to give gluten to people who are thinking they're getting non-gluten cookies. He's like, oh yeah, I'll help you sort them out. So he helps them. That little lie connects them.
Yeah.
Right. And then the next thing he says, hey man, so-and-so was supposed to be here to receive an award, but he's not here. I want you to pretend like you're that guy. You don't even have to say a speech or anything. I just want you to go ahead and just, all you got to do is wave to the people. It's not a big deal. We'll introduce you. You stand up. You just wave. That way he doesn't look bad. So you're thinking again, oh, this is a really small thing. Yeah, I can stand up and wave. But now you've lied about who you are. And the more that goes down and the more you continue to say yes, the easier those yeses become. You know what I'm saying? Because you're committed. You're now in a state of commitment, you know? And it takes somebody with some really great self-awareness to be like, oh, I'm getting played right now. You know, and say, look, I ain't doing that. I mean, has it ever happened to you, Crystal?
Honestly, not that I can think about at the moment, but definitely this plays out when people are grooming people.
Yeah.
So when predators are grooming. So this is a tactic that's very common amongst predators. So they'll start with something small, getting you to do something. Even if somebody's trying to get you to do something illegal, like you were talking about, you know, they'll start with something small and then they'll gradually keep going and keep going and keep going. When somebody's grooming you for an assault, they try to get you to do little things, or, you know, maybe they touch you on your arm, and even though you don't like it, you're like, it's not that bad. You accept it. And so then the next time they do something a little bit more, you accept it. And so it continues to go and go and go. That's definitely an example that I can think of.
So a little different from you guys' example. The biggest example that when I heard of this method of persuasion that I thought of is at Sam's Club or Costco. Yeah. When they give you a sample of a food and then they give you a coupon for it. It's like, God dang it. How can I not say yes? So I've definitely fell into that. I said, yes. Hey, would you like a sample? Yeah. Hey, would you like this coupon for it? God dang it. I took the coupon. Now I got to buy the product. So, yeah, definitely. I've been got a lot of times, man.
It also reminds me of when they come in to do the like you were talking a little while ago, Crystal, when you're talking about vacuum cleaner salespeople, when they come to your house and you're like, "Can I come in and show you this vacuum?" You're like, "Yes." Hey, can I clean this spot on your carpet? Yes. Can I do half your house? You know, yes. You know, do you want to buy this? Do you want to buy this carpet? Oh, I really don't want to buy the carpet, but you know, he done did so much. Like he done vacuumed half my house. He done he spent all this time here. Like, man, I really feel like I need to buy this carpet cleaner.
I feel like this is the same method that the Jehovah's Witnesses also use.
100%. Yep.
I actually have been getting handwritten letters since COVID started. Since, for safety purposes, they're not really going door to door right now. Yeah. But I've gotten handwritten letters, and I don't know, something about a handwritten letter that pulls at my heart. It forces you to open the goddamn envelope.
That is funny. It's funny because you know what? A lot of businesses will send their stuff where it looks like it's handwritten just so that you'll open it.
I'm trying to think of the method of persuasion that's being used there, because something is persuading you to open an envelope that you already know is not something that you're interested in. You're curious about what's in it. And I wonder what method of persuasion is being used there to get you to open it. I think it's consistency. I think it's your consistency with your values. Like, you value other people's time. You know that a person who sat down and wrote a letter committed some time to doing that. That's not like a change the name in print type deal.
Yeah. And there's something about anytime like somebody gives me a birthday card or something, like if they've written in it, like handwritten in it, something to me, I hold that more dear to my heart. Yeah. And so when I get these handwritten letters, I'm like, God dang, Jehovah's Witnesses.
See, now that you
almost made me show up on Sunday.
Hey, you can show up online now.
so they're persuasive, but not that persuasive. Yeah. But now, what would you do if the person who's been writing you these letters all this time shows up to your door and goes, "Hey, Raquel, I'm the person who's been writing you all these letters. I really want to invite you to a Sunday to come to our." You're going.
Yeah, be there in my Sunday best.
Yeah, that's funny. That's really funny. You know what? And
That's why a lot of people try to avoid them. Like when they come to the door, they be trying to hide because it's something about that. Like, you know, when they start talking to you, being so nice to you and like, hey, I just want to teach you or show you something or help you learn or something. You know, they try to really get you.
Yeah. You know what's real funny? There's something I remember when I was little. The Jehovah's Witness, and there was different ones that came to our door. Jehovah's Witness, Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, all of them. They all came down our street. First neighbor that got wind that they were on the street, they'd call everybody else and be like, hey, they're coming down the street. And everybody would shut off the lights, go to the back of the house to not answer the door. But one time I answered the door, and I don't remember who they were with, but they had their one of their little colorful brochures with all these cute, happy animals on it. And she's like, how would you feel about being able to sit next to a panda bear? And, you know, and she's giving me this like spiel, and I'm little, you know, and I'm like, ooh, that would be really cool. And so I'm listening to her story, and I'm like, man, she got me with this story. Should be ashamed of yourself messing with this little girl.
That's how they get you.
The fifth principle is the principle of liking. People prefer to say yes to those that they like. But what causes one person to like another? Persuasion science tells us that there are 3 important factors. We like people who are similar to us, we like people who pay us compliments, and we like people who cooperate with us towards mutual goals. As more and more of the interactions that we are having take place online, it might be worth asking whether these factors can be employed effectively in, let's say, online negotiations. In a series of negotiation studies carried out between MBA students at 2 well-known business schools, some groups were told, time is money, get straight down to business. In this group, around 55% were able to come to an agreement. A second group, however, were told, before you begin negotiating, exchange some personal information with each other. Identify a similarity you share in common, then begin negotiating. In this group, 90% of them were able to come to successful and agreeable outcomes that were typically worth 18% more to both parties. So to harness this powerful principle of liking, be sure to look for areas of similarity that you share with others and genuine compliments you could give before you get down to business.
The 5th principle of persuasion is likability. This persuasion technique means that the more a person likes you, the more you can persuade that person. People have a tendency to like others that are like themselves. It is a higher probability to persuade someone if you share the same name, come from the same city, or have similar life experiences. This is also why salespeople are often attractive and why more attractive waiters and waitresses make better tips.
I give the ugly ones bigger tips. Just kidding.
Has this principle ever been used on you? And if so, how?
Oh, this has been used on me a lot of times, especially with salespeople.
Yeah, you know what? This is one of the funniest things that I'm always like, you're so full of it when a salesperson comes to the door, is when they try to say, oh, your neighbor Billy Johnson down the street, he got this service. And your neighbor Sarah, listen, guy, first of all, I don't even know my neighbor, so you could totally be making them names up.
That's consensus.
Yeah.
He's trying to find, hey, all your neighbors are doing it. Why aren't you doing it? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, shoot, they're all doing it. They're all paying for pest control.
Or saying, or like earlier when you were talking about getting pulled over, you know, oh, you were in the military? Oh, I was in the military too.
Yeah, it's likability. Like, for example, when I was looking to buy a car, and I did an inquiry, and then the person who calls me back is Hispanic because I have a Hispanic name. So the person calls me back and speaking to me in Spanish. You're trying to be like you're trying to associate yourself with me, but since I already know this principle, I can call BS. You know what I'm saying, bro? Like, don't even try it. I know what you're doing. Like, you know what I mean? You're not slick. I already know. You're just trying to associate with me. Or they'll ask me like, hey, so where are you from? Or were you in the military? Like, they try to do the same thing to me. But as long as you know that that's the technique they're using, it's easy to shut it down because now you're going to make you see it, you call it out. Hey, bro, I see this.
Have you ever seen anybody, either of you, use this with ill intent?
For likability, yeah, it's manipulation. Like, for example, when, let's say, for example, you're a good-looking girl and you wanna get a guy with a lot of money, and although you don't bring nothing to the table, you come with you're attractive,
What if you put a picture online of you with hair and green eyes, and then you show up and you have no hair and you have brown eyes?
Well, Raquel, don't feed into her BS. And you count your blessings. That's what you do.
I have definitely been a victim of this persuasion of likability.
Yeah.
For me, especially in restaurants, I've had, waitresses who on the receipt will put, "It was great serving you," with a heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God dang
Got
it.
you.
Gave her a $2 tip. And I was expecting to give.
That's true.
I said, "She's so sweet."
Yeah, that's so true. And a lot of times you can sometimes you can see when people are not being genuine because they're making too much of an effort to be liked. And I see that with salespeople when they come in, they're like, hey guy, I'm just here to talk to you about. I'm like, bro, like, turn it down. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this high energy that you're coming at me with is phony. I could see it. I can see it's not your personality. It's good to be able to see it and call it out because then you don't fall prey to it. You don't, oh, this guy really likes me. This guy, you know what I'm saying? Like, no.
For sure.
Yeah.
The only form of ethical persuasion that honestly exists is when the goals of the persuader are aligned with the goals of the persuadee.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. That's a win-win. And I think that in order to be a good persuader, and I was talking to someone about this the other day about sales. I've done a lot of sales. And so I always thought I was bad at it, but I'm actually pretty good at sales. The number one rule about sales is you have to sell someone something that they actually want. It's dumb to try to sell something to somebody that they're not interested in. So if I have a car for sale, but you're not in the market for a car, it's going to be impossible for me to sell that car to you because you don't want it. You don't need it. And I was watching what's the guy's name? Cardone?
Grant Cardone.
Yeah, Grant Cardone. He was doing a thing where he was like, sell me this pen. And the guy was like, hey, you should buy this pen because it writes so well. It's the perfect size, it's the perfect weight, it has this great balance. And the guy's like, no, I ain't buying it. You suck. You suck at selling. And when it comes down to it, they're like, you never even asked me if I was in the market for a pen. I've got a desk full of pens. I'm not in the market for a pen. You know what I'm saying? So the very first question you should be asking is, hey, are you in the market for a pen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not in the market for a pen.
But this ain't just any pen. This pen's going to make your life easier.
How?
Because when you write with this pen on your clipboard, it immediately goes into your laptop and organizes based on keywords. If you write down an appointment, it automatically goes to your calendar.
Show me.
You want this pen.
Show me.
I'm about to design it right now.
Yes. See, that's that would have been a win-lose situation. There's no pen. Like, she was being nefarious. She was making it up. She was lying. Oh, Bernie Madoff over here.
I was just giving an example.
Do you think that you can persuade somebody non-verbally through body language? I know we talked a lot about the way people persuade using, language, but can that be done non-verbally?
Yes. I'd say in the military, when you have hand and arm signals to get people to do things, when you're at an event and suddenly everybody starts running in one direction, you have no idea what's going on. But you see a bunch of people running in one direction, and you assume that you need to be running there too, even if they're not saying anything. So
that's consensus. If everybody else is running,
yeah, but it's also but it's also non.
I'm not saying
as well. Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's non-verbal, but I'm saying that's the theory that's being applied there is consensus.
Right.
100%. If everybody drops down on the ground, you're going to drop down on the ground too, like because you're assuming that's what you're supposed to do in this scenario. There is some nonverbal body language that you can do as well. For example, how you're sitting in a room when somebody walks in terms of like your body posture that can kind of say you're confident. You know, if you're sitting there and
being
you're all
open.
hushed over and you're kind of bent down and you're kind of closing your body, that could be like lack of confidence. So you could be, you could be exposing yourself. And then there's also the fact of getting somebody to follow your lead. You start mirroring them, and then as soon as you guys are aligned, then you take the lead, because now they're following you. You know what I'm saying? So once you guys synchronize, then you take over their body language, and now you're controlling them subconsciously. So you yawn, they yawn. You take a seat, they take a seat. Is it leading? But yeah, those
I
are
definitely
always.
think that a lot of nonverbal persuasion can take place between family.
Yeah.
Or people who are close to each other. You can give them a look
Yep.
and they kind of know, hey, don't do that.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
actually a really good example.
I think
That is.
especially as children, like your parents can give you a look and be like, and they don't even say nothing. Or you're like, shoot, let me stop doing what I'm doing. They persuaded you to stop with just a look.
That is so true.
Has your dad ever pinched you, Raquel?
Never pinched me, but I definitely got a death stare.
What does a pinch have to do with nonverbal communication?
Because that's nonverbal,
That's a physical.
Physical.
but it's nonverbal.
Yeah.
I got the worst thing that I used to get is like he used to do this horrible shh sound, and it used to like put like chills in my spine. I hated that.
That's so funny. That's really funny. That's crazy. I don't even remember doing that. That's really hilarious.
The final principle is consensus. Especially when they are uncertain, people will look to the actions and behaviors of others to determine their own. You may have noticed that hotels often place a small card in bathrooms that attempt to persuade guests to reuse their towels and linen. Most do this by drawing a guest's attention to the benefits that reuse can have on environmental protection. It turns out that this is a pretty effective strategy, leading to around 35% compliance. But could there be an even more effective way? Well, it turns out that about 75% of people who check into a hotel for 4 nights or longer will reuse their towels at some point during their stay. So what would happen if we took a lesson from the principle of consensus and simply included that information on the cards and said that 75% of our guests reuse their towels at some time during their stay, so please do so as well. It turns out that when we do this, towel reuse rises by 26%. Now imagine the next time you stay in a hotel, you saw one of these signs. You picked it up and you read the following message. 75% of people who have stayed in this room have reused their towel. What would you think? Well, here's what you might think. I hope they're not the same towels. And like most people, you probably think that this sign will have no influence on your behavior whatsoever. But it turns out that changing just a few words on a sign to honestly point out what comparable previous guests have done was the single most effective message, leading to a 33% increase in reuse. So, the science is telling us that rather than relying on our own ability to persuade others, we can point to what many others are already doing, especially many similar others.
The sixth
Principle of persuasion is consensus. This is what we call social proof. People are social by nature and therefore seek to be accepted socially. When making a decision, we often look to others around us to see what they're doing before we make our decision. When is the last time that you looked at reviews before making a large purchase or eating at a new restaurant? This also means that if an important figure or a large majority approves of something, it is likely that you will be persuaded to also like it. This principle is in use when they say Oprah Winfrey recommends this book or Michael Jordan eats this brand of cereal, because you place these individuals in high esteem. You can be more persuaded to buy the book that Oprah recommends or eat the cereal that Jordan eats. This largely is the reason why big brands use sponsors to promote their products. It is also very likely that in a group you will align with the group's overall decision to do something. Such as a jury, when 11 people have unanimously agreed the person on trial is guilty. If all 11 are aligned, you will have a higher propensity to align with that verdict, even if you don't believe the person is actually guilty. Has this principle ever been used on either of you? And if so, how was it applied? And tell us what you think about it. Have you used it?
It's been used on me before, and I think if you guys kind of think about it, if you ever walked into a room and then you start looking around where you're going to sit, you try to find people that are like you to go sit with. And if you see people doing something, whatever you see them doing, you feel like you also need to do that as well, even if you haven't been given the instructions. I think we all want to be accepted socially, and so when we walk into a room, we want to fit in with everybody. So that's why sometimes when you go to a nice restaurant, you're like, oh man, I'm not dressed for this. I ain't dressed for this nice restaurant. I feel out of place.
Same with now, like with social media, people are real big. Like they have the influencers, you know. So oh, let me go see this person on Instagram that I follow. You know what the style is for evening wear.
What's the difference between influencing and persuading? How come they don't call them persuaders?
Dun. It's a nice way of saying it. But you know what? Really, I think that influence is more about kind of unknowingly influencing people. I think that when you know that you're doing it, I would say that that's persuasion or that's manipulation. But I think that you can influence somebody just by, for instance, if you have a group of people in the office who are all very positive, who have good energy, and you have somebody that comes into the office every day that's maybe negative or down, or maybe they don't dress nice, something like that. If they're around people all the time who have a good attitude, who have that good aura around them, and they're dressing for success, and they're speaking the lingo, whatever that is, I think that you can have influence on that person in a positive way, and you're not really trying to. Like that's not your intention, but it's gonna happen because that person is in that environment.
Sure. No, I agree with that.
And I think that can go both ways.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The difference between persuasion and influencing is a lot of times influencers, they're just themselves. And because of that popularity, that kind of you assume they have, makes you want to be like them.
Yeah.
They're not really saying, hey, be like me. They're just saying, this is me. I'm so cool.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I want to be cool too.
Yeah, 100%.
Trying to get the latest Jordans like her.
Yeah. Oh, that's cute. I like how she's wearing that. I want to wear that. It's 100%. Yeah.
And then you go get it, and it's like when you see it on the mannequin, and it looks all nice, and then you put it on, and you're like, oh.
Yep. I think that I have definitely fell a victim to getting other people's opinions before I buy something or before I do something or before I go someplace, because I think that we all want to optimize the best experience that we can have.
Sure.
And so if I can avoid a crappy experience or terrible food or, a bad hotel or whatever, I'm going to put myself in the best position to do that by looking at reviews, hearing what other people say, people that I admire, what do they like? Like, if they like this book, it must be something special, like the Oprah Best Read list or whatever.
Right.
And all of that is definitely a form of manipulation, because so many people, I've learned by being in business that you can buy yourself in anybody's list. Right. I can pay to get on Oprah's top 10 list.
You don't let the secret out the bag.
Yeah. You can pay to be published on these different platforms, these different magazines of influence. Right. And when you're able to do that, you realize that it's not about you being the best. It's about you being able to pay and look like the best.
100%.
Right. Something that I think is really that really applies to this specific one is COVID.
Yeah.
Because you have all these people who believe something that a bunch of people are going with. I'm going to wear a mask. I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm going to wear gloves. I'm not going to wear gloves. I'm going to wear a mask and gloves in my car when I'm all by myself. And people do it because of the consensus. As we wrap up this bonus episode, we hope that this was a topic that resonated with all of our listeners. It is always best to be aware when a persuasive tactic is being used on you, for sure. So the decision or the action you make is one that you want to make and not one that you've made outside of your own free will. Raquel, I want to thank you for co-hosting with me today and look forward to future opportunities where we can co-host together. Jose, thanks for being our guest today and for allowing us to put you in the hot seat.
No worries. I enjoy the hot seat.
For those of you who are interested in persuasion and leveling up your persuasive skills, please pick up Dr. Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. The link will be provided in the show notes. Thank you for listening to this bonus episode of the Undeniable Level Up podcast.